I made $80,000 passively my first year. And I was like, how is this even possible?
You started to get approached to manage other people's properties. Was this a light bulb moment for you as far as, okay, this model makes sense?
I basically lost everything. It keeps going up and up and up. Then you start to realize, you're like, why don't I just buy the building? If I can afford the rent, can I afford the mortgage?
It takes that entrepreneurial mindset to find the opportunity, to see it, to be willing to take the risk.
We went into contract, and 3 months later, we were going to get the key. During those 3 months, I watched over 100 episodes of Flip My House.
You've been able to replace the same level of income that you would have had from your W-2. You go all in. What happened next? Talk to me about your transition towards real estate investment.
Yeah, I think it's just natural. I would say the biggest point was I have a landlord, a master lease that I have that I've been paying rent on, right? So master lease is kind of like what we say the rental arbitrage in a sense. So I have, 8 units in this building. And every single year, he's been increasing my rent by like $10,000, right? It keeps going up and up and up. Then you start to realize, you're like, I'm paying $50,000 in rent for this building, okay? You're like, why don't I just buy the building? If I can afford the rent, can I afford the mortgage? It's simple, just that simple, right? Then you start to think like, okay, how can I make this work? Because the problem is in New York is that the dollar values are so high. So these buildings are $2-3 million, $4 million a piece. Then you have to come up with some creative ways to get that. Because at first I was like, well, how could I afford to pay for, a $3 million building, right? And so I found the seller who was willing to seller finance, and boom. So it took some work. You find, I know I'm making it sound super easy, but like it's
Yeah.
you're reaching out to people, you partner up. So I partnered up with another guy. So I didn't do it on my own. So I always want to tell people like you can't, if you look at any of these big guys, no one's doing this by themselves. Like you partner up with folks. I found another person that was doing Airbnb in New York that was interested in investing, and we partnered up together and we bought our first building together. And then we found someone that was going to sell a finance. And then once you build up that, then you're like, okay, I had enough money from this one. Let me go do the next one. It's incremental progress. You don't start one day and you're just booming and you're like raising millions of dollars. And I always tell people, it's just like, you got to start somewhere, right? And is it hard? Was it hard? Did I not have a life for a few months? Yes. Was it awful? Was it a long process? Yes. All of those things. But it's like a little bit of pain. And this is where we talk about working out. I know before the podcast, we were talking about like, that grit and like someone who likes to go through, I'm training for this bodybuilding competition, like that thing about like, is it hard? Does it suck in the moment? Yes. But the payoff was worth it. Sorry, I'm rambling, but that's the gist of it.
No, that's amazing. That's amazing. So let's, can we break that down? Like that first deal. So you're like, okay, you have this realization of like, well, if I can afford the rent, I can afford the mortgage. Let me own. Was it that same building that you were renting? No. Okay. So you start looking, you start prospecting. Just to give us an idea of like the volume side of things, like how much volume of work needs to be done to find one opportunity. Like was this something where you looked at a lot of deals, you made a lot of offers, a lot of people were not interested in seller financing, and then you finally found the one? Like let's start there.
So I looked at a lot. Maybe,
yeah,
I don't
okay.
know. But there's only a few because I only wanted to operate legal buildings, right? Like that was already limits my selection. And then the buildings that I could afford, because it's New York City and the buildings are very expensive. The buildings I could afford would be, I could only afford a certain price range. So that limits me there down too. So it's like natural select, it was what you can afford and how many were meeting the requirements of being legal. So I'm left with this. And I would say I probably went in, I've looked at least 30, walked into at least 20, No. Probably to at least maybe 20. And I walked them or went in. Um, and I would say one of my saving grace, and I'll give a shout out to my realtor, Stanley Monfort. He's amazing. And I don't know if I would have been able to do it without the pocket, because he gave me a pocket deal, like a deal that he knew about that was off market, because I'm competing against these larger folks that are also investors that are gonna that they see a Class B building, they're gonna jump on it too, right? Um,
Hmm.
so having a great realtor, I can't even. Stanley has been paramount to the success that I've had, and I'm forever grateful. And I think he's amazing. He's one of the best and the best in Manhattan, I'd say, because he just gets it. He knows it. He knows how to structure that. He knows how to help. So you need a good realtor, because a lot of this is, if by the time it's on the MLS, it's probably a little too late.
Hmm.
Like if you're trying to find a deal, right? So a lot of this is relationships. And I know that sounds like, oh, Shannon, relationships. How do I get the it feels like there's all, but again, these are like these incremental bits. You can still do it. Who do you talk to? You go to conferences, you go to events to meet other people in the city. And you're like, oh, I met this random person. Oh, now we can work together. So it's those things.
Hmm.
But in terms of the work, all of them needed work. So I watched so construction work. So I'm not I've dealt in property management, so I knew a little bit about maintenance and stuff, and I did like a small renovation in my own condo, but I've never done a full blown renovation for a building. And so so I remember we went into contract, and 3 months later we were going to get the key. During those 3 months, I watched over 100 episodes of Flip My House, um, renovation, this. I wanted to, like, because to me, there was no excuse for me not to get this right. And so on
Hmm.
HGTV, you watch the TV show and you learn, it's, first of all, it was all my money. I'm putting in, hundreds of $1,000 into this deal. And for the excuse to be that I don't know how to do renovations, that can't be the
Wow.
excuse. So you got to educate yourself. So I was listening to podcasts, I was watching YouTube videos. I feel I probably know way too much I've watched too many shows on how to do it. And I kept realizing, okay, what typically goes wrong in these deals, right? And one of the things, this is Turek from Flip My House, the flip show, Flip and Flop show. Um, One of the things he talked about was the owners that was doing the renovation wouldn't show up. They're like, were you on site? And so that was a big takeaway when some of the construction was going wrong. The owners were not on site because they thought they could just hand it over to the construction team. The construction team would handle it, right?
Hmm.
No, you have to project management. So I was there during the construction phase of the building. I was there every single day. Well, no, let me stop. Let me backtrack. Not every single day. Let me backtrack. Almost every single day, at least 6 days a week. And I would say almost. There was probably like 1 or 2 days where I took 1 or 2 weeks where I did only 6 days, but I went there almost every single day. And by that, I was able to stay on top of the construction team when changes needed to be made. And the other thing that I remember learning from the renovation shows was they were always delayed in material. I was like, that's not going to happen to me. I made sure that all my material was there before they even needed it. And I remember my partner saying, we don't need to order it now. We can get it when we get. I was like, nope, I learned that from the show. I'm going to make sure all my material's there in advance. I don't care if it sits there. And some of the material actually sat there for a month. I did not care because I didn't want to be the delay for the construction team not getting it done on time. So, and then there's other things about, like, they didn't know the plans. There was confusion, miscommunication. I learned that from consulting because I ended up, when I was working in consulting, I got my project management certification. And one thing they tell you about project management and what goes wrong in projects is communication. Communication is the number one miscommunication between the different stakeholders. That's what you learn when you do your project management certification. And so one of my biggest things was being intent on the construction team knowing what's happening, from the interior designer, from me, the project manager, and making sure that all parties were informed. So I was little intense about my Excel document. And I remember my contractor was like, you're one of the best clients I've ever worked with, because I created a PowerPoint presentation for him to lay out exactly where everything went, color, like there was never a confusion about where it went, because even if the contractor wasn't on site, the team could see posted on in the house what the plan was. So there was never a miscommunication about what was supposed to be done here. Yeah.
Wow, that is so interesting because I can totally see how, it's so much easier to just say to yourself, I'm not an expert in construction, and
I'm
therefore,
not going to
I'll
let,
just delegate. Well, either I just won't do it, or I'll do it and I'll trust them fully, and then I'll live with the consequences. But it's like, no, like, you do the work to educate yourself, and you get to a level of knowledge that's probably better than most, and then staying on top of it, right? That's so interesting now. um, let's talk about the financing piece specifically for the first deal, right? So, you mentioned, okay, first of all, the fact that you were looking for legal buildings already was narrowing down your choices, right, in terms of what properties to look for. But then you mentioned budget, right? You were also narrowing it down based on budget. Now, I'm curious because, first of all, there's the seller financing piece, right? You mentioned that you ended up being able to get seller financing. Was your Let's start there. Was your original, let's say, idea of what properties you could afford, did that consider, or was that expecting that you would be able to succeed at getting seller financing, or was seller financing just kind of like a cherry on the top that you managed to get, but you were basically able to close on that property, with the funds you personally had?
so I did something even more creative than just typical seller finance. It was like in the beginning, I didn't have all the money to buy the building. And so what I knew was what we did, we structured it where we were going to do a lease like a lease that converted into a purchase. So
Mm-hmm.
essentially, we told the owner, hey, we're going to buy the building. Okay. We're going to give you your deposit up front. We give them a 10% deposit right up front. And then we would we would write the purchase contract and a 1-year lease, because I knew that I needed to show revenue so then I can go get financing if the seller
Mm-hmm.
finance didn't work out. Because you need to show income from the building to then go get financing, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we structured it. We're like, hey, look, we'll pay you 1 full year worth of rent up front. Okay. You give us possession of the building. We pay you 1 full year's rent up front. We pay you the deposit for the building. And
So wait, it was the 10% deposit plus 1 year of rent upfront.
yes.
It wasn't throughout, like, it
Nope.
was. Okay.
And
Okay.
so then we signed an agreement and we would close in 18 months. So we signed it
Mm.
and we gave ourselves 18 months because typically the bank likes to see 12 months of rental income to say, okay, here's proven income from this building. So we put in the contract, it'd be 18 months, right? The seller wanted
Mhm.
out. They wanted to sell and they wanted the money. And they're like, there's no risk to them because if we didn't close, because if we didn't have the money to close, then we would be in default of the contract, and then the renovations and everything, they'd be able to keep everything because they still had title to the building. So it's about getting creative because I knew I didn't have all the money at the time. So
Mm.
we did a master lease. We basically rented it out. We were able to renovate it. So now they get a brand new building. We renovated it. It's risk. Is this scary? Yes. But how else do I get into a $2.9 million building?
Hmm.
Think about it.
Wow.
How else do I get into how do I get into a $3 million building?
Got to do it somehow.
You gotta do it somehow. So how do you do it? You're like, well, I know the bank's not gonna approve this mortgage or this loan because I don't make enough to do it, right? So what I'm gonna do is get the master lease. Now the income's coming in. Now I can prove to the bank, here, bank, here's the income from a year.
But wait, was it vacant before? Like, was it
So she was going to deliver it vacant. There was a few tenants in there, but she delivered it vacant. Yes. So it was vacant.
okay?
Because we were
Okay.
short-term rentaling it. It's Airbnb.
Yeah. But I'm curious, like okay, so 1 year lease up front, and then you were subleasing it as short-term rentals throughout that year, and then the revenue that you wanted to show to the bank, that the bank was then able to recognize, was it the year upfront lease that was paid, or was it the actual revenue that was being made on the back end on the STR side? Because that's the challenge sometimes with financing a property that you want to do STR with. Like the bank won't necessarily recognize all of that revenue that
they're gonna
can
represent a percentage of it. Fortunately, we were doing well. So yeah. But let me just tell you, so we always knew that we wanted to come in and seller finance. She didn't know that. We knew that.
Mm.
So, but we knew that we just needed to get in. And to me, the bank option was like, hey, if she doesn't, we'll present the seller finance.
Worst case.
Because we knew that she had a cheaper mortgage, a cheaper interest rate than what we can get in the market, because she has a cheaper rate than what we would get. So we knew once you can show someone the numbers, you can show someone like, look, you're paying 5%, we're going to pay you 7%. Look how much more money you're going to make by allowing us to seller finance. You've been working with us for a whole year, right? Instead of you selling, and you don't have to pay the property taxes, because now you have to do the capital gains tax on $3 million. Now you don't have to pay the capital gains tax on the $3 million, because she bought it, 30 years ago. So she bought it for like 200,000 30 years ago, and now it's worth $3 million. So it was a win-win-win. So our thing was the bank option was the backup. Or the bank option was the number one. Like, we were going to just play, because you have to have strategies, right? You're going to come in. How are we going to, like, the bank was one way, and then the seller finance was our other way. Because she could have said no. And then we were like, okay, say no, no problem. We can prove it here. We can go to the bank and go get a loan. No problem. Because we had the income loan. So mind you, none of our own. So the only thing we really had to put up was the money for the deposit and the renovation, right? But the deposit was only 10%, right? Not even a full, because we would have went to the bank would have made a put up 30%, 25 to 30%, because it's commercial, right?
Yeah, and the first year of lease, right?
And the first year lease.
Yeah.
So, but we made that money back from the rental income that came in. So in theory, now we're a year, into it, and you're like, oh, it paid for itself after a year and a half.
Now, if you were to do that deal all over again, at the end of the day, it was the first deal. Would you do something differently? Would you structure something differently around the seller financing component, or anything else that? Because I mean, it's there's always things that you learn along the way, and you come in with a certain idea and it happens another way. Like, or was it everything kind of went as planned, and you look back and you're like, I would have done it exactly the same way?
So I'm a planner, and it was a lot of my money, and this is how I operate, period. So I had a plan A, B, and C. So there's always a plan A, B, and C. So I don't, it worked out because I planned. So you prepare. I was prepared. I don't know how, there's no, how would I do it differently, because the plan B, like, if she didn't take the plan A, then I was going to do plan B, but it was always gonna, I don't know. So everything worked out. So
That's awesome. And then, just out of curiosity there, when it comes to your next deal, right? Because I know you're on your third now, right? As far as the acquisitions go, similar strategy, similar plan A, plan B, plan C, like, or what changed, in the second deal, let's say?
Now I have money. Now I have more money.
That changed.
So that's changed. So now I can just go to the bank and just go get the loan. So that, um, and then now I'm working with just more investors, so to partner up, so it's just not my money because obviously I don't have endless amounts of money to just continue
Hmm.
buildings, especially in New York City. So now the focus is more so working with other homeowners that understand the value of the Airbnb and want really great returns in a market where there's not that much supply. So it's, you know, so we're looking for investors that want to put in 100,000. I know it's a big ticket, 50 to 100,000 plus into doing another building. So yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. So, can you tell us briefly about your second deal, like the second property you bought?
So so let me the second one went a little bit array. So this one went a little bit array. Um and this was with a partner. So this one's a little bit more sensitive because it's still it didn't go as well
Okay.
because of the way the yeah, so everything worked out, closed, all that stuff. It's just that the partner got a little greedy. And so we're kind of, so that was an interesting one. But I don't know what to say. I'm like, I feel like if you are not, what's the word? I believe you should always act in good faith and do what's right. I truly believe it's always going to come back to you. And I live by that. And so I'm not stressing. We're still in the works of that second one. Um, and so if it does, if we don't come to an agreement with the second one, then it is what it is. I operated in good faith. And if that person doesn't, so anyway, so that's that. And then the third one is just my own. I just, I kind of got burnt on that second one. And I decided to purchase the second one without a partner. And so just bought this one flat out with the typical loan from a bank. Um, and so this one I will be, it's going to be owner occupied on the lower level, and then upper units I will be renting out. So it's good. I
Hmm.
get really affordable housing, get to live in a beautiful brownstone in New York.
Yeah, hard to get in New York otherwise,
Yeah,
huh?
yeah. And so,
So
and then the other
when it
deals are
comes
just
to
more
the
so working with other owners, and we're just trying to
Mhm.
structure those. Yeah.
Makes sense. And without going into the details at all, but just at a high level in terms of, like, partnerships is such a crucial thing in business, but also such a tricky, thing in business. Any lessons there that you could share as far as, like, maybe were there red flags that you could have identified earlier, or whether, were there things that, now looking forward, when you're going to be looking into getting into a new partnership, you're going to try to set up in a different way?
Yeah. I made a mistake and where we didn't document everything in terms of what someone was going to do versus not someone else was going to do. And I made a mistake and took, it was, yeah, I don't want to go in it because we're still in the middle of that. But so if I could tell anyone, you would, I don't know, there's something about me that feels like I'm a woman of my word, and I work with people who are on, like, if I have to second guess my partner, then maybe I shouldn't be in business with them. And so I'm a
Hmm.
little bit torn about this because there's this thing around like trust no one, or, and I don't want to work that way. I always want to work where the people that I'm working with I actually do trust, and I know they're not going.
But at the same time, you want to be safe, so put it in writing, basically, is what you're
Yeah,
saying.
and so it's just a matter of, but even if you put things in writing, there's still certain things there's always gray area, especially in these deals where like you can get a little creative here or there, and you wanna be with someone that just at least has a certain level of character and value, and they're just gonna, like, I don't know, I just believe in, like, you are your brother's keeper, do the right thing. Like, you should always just, because it all comes back, and the money's not worth it.
Hmm.
And your reputation, like, I want my reputation to be stellar with in terms of just like, especially when you're dealing with money And so anyway, I would say the biggest mistake I would say is just making sure to do a better job at documenting and not assuming that the person is going to do what they say they're going to do. So like, so that, I mean,
Mhm.
I think that was a rookie mistake on my end, especially at such a high dollar point. But I lost a little bit here and there, and you learn. Like everything hasn't been golden. There's been things. I went into contract in certain buildings I didn't get. I spent all money on getting an appraisal. Like there's so many deals that fell through. I'm telling you about the ones that went through, but like there's stuff that did not go through as well. And I
For
think
sure.
it's part of the journey, and you just got to keep at
It's part
it.
of the game. Part of the game. Couple of things to I'd like to touch on. You participated in a TV show. Can you tell us a little bit about what that was all about,
Oh,
and you know
yeah.
what was that project about,
Yeah,
and when in the career or timeline did that
that was
happen?
last year. It was called Real Estate Insights on Now Media. They have syndication, and it's like a local TV network in Texas and Chicago, and has some distribution in Alabama and Florida. So I was a contributor for the show where I was their expert in short-term rentals. So I'm terrible at social
Hmm.
media, and I don't necessarily like a lot of attention. So, I never really posted most of it, but it's out there, and I'm supposed to be working with someone to help me with. Maybe you can help me a little bit more with marketing my
Oh no, I'm the worst at that. I just press record, I have a fun chat, and then someone else takes care of the rest.
show.
Got to know where your strengths are at, and
I'm like I'm
when they're not.
Yeah, so yeah, but it was a great show, and I may come back and maybe host a show in the future. So we'll see. But right now,
That's
I just want to
nice.
focus on building out in New York for right now.
That's awesome. Now we have 5 more minutes. I want to touch a little bit on the mindset piece of it all, because you and I were talking off camera of the fact that you are an intense person
Mm.
in a good way, and how you channel that intensity through, yes, business, but also sports and challenges that you like to put yourself through. So where first of all, where does that come from? Like, is it something that has always been in you? Is it something that you've had to sort of work on developing by putting yourself out there and going through these challenges, like the bodybuilding competition that you're preparing for in a year, or the massive hike that you're also going to be doing in was it in Chile, you said?
Patagonia, yeah, in Chile, yeah.
Patagonia. So yeah, where does that mindset come from? And why do you think that putting yourself in those difficult situations is important for you?
I and maybe this is maybe a little bit of the immigrant mindset, but we just have I'm just grateful. We have so many opportunities, and I feel like, and I think we were talking earlier. I was like, if you're gonna play the game, play the game. Like if I'm here and I'm gonna be this property manager, if I'm gonna be in this industry, if I'm gonna be at work, like do it and do it well. So I think there's an element of me that just wants to just do my best in all things that I do. And yeah, it's a little intense. Also, there's something just, I don't know, I kind of get a high on it. I love it. I love being around intense people. I love being around like winners or folks that are just like killing it. Like I'm really impressed with folks, when they are, you hear these stories around someone like, you know, they stayed up 3 days and knocked it out, and I just the level of intensity to get something done and a sense of accomplishment. I think it's in all of us in just various ways. I think I just channel it a little bit into the work, and I think some people
Hmm.
don't necessarily channel it to work. But I don't know. It's my passion. I love it. Um,
When's the first time you did something like that, like very intense, outside of work?
I mean, when I was an athlete, so I was in high school. I wanted to be the best. Like I had all these records at my high school, and I was one of the few athletes I remember that where you would get 5 medals in events. It's really rare because you have to. That means you have to compete in 2 field events and 2 running event. So this is track and field. And so my goal every single time was to get first, second in every event that I competed in. And so my goal was to get 5 medals at the end of the meet and it was crazy. It was intense, but I did it. Like, it was just the next
Mm.
thing is like, okay, well, let me just try to be the best. And people would say that I was crazy for doing 5 events. And if anyone knows anything about track and field, 5 events in one meet is a lot. Most people only do 1 or 2. And I don't know. It's just always, I don't know. I don't know. I always wanted to
It's
get
who you
careers.
are.
It's just there. And then you get
You
inspired.
think
I
it's
think
something? Mhm.
seeing other business owners, you get inspired and you're like, wow, like, why can't I? If they can, why not? And why can't you? Are they smarter than you? Are they better than you? Like, there's so much opportunity now with YouTube and podcasts. There's just there's no excuse. You can learn anything. You saw
Mhm.
100 episodes. I can tell you so much about construction and flipping houses and like there's no
That's crazy.
excuse.
Yeah, no, the access to knowledge is no longer the excuse. That's for sure. You consume a lot of information. You mentioned that you read, 3 books a month, and I don't know how many podcasts you say you listen to, but a lot.
A lot.
So what would be like a book, for example, that you think has had the most impact
Oh, man.
on your life?
So there's a book called Predictably Irrationally, and that's by Dan
Mm.
Ariely, I think its name is. And basically, it's the study of it's this behavior psychologist that goes through all the things that like as human beings we're irrational, right? And you know that you're irrational. So how do you predict your irrationality, right? So for example,
Mm.
we know as human beings that we tend to be risk adverse, right? Like, it's just a way that through, I guess, natural evolution that we try to protect ourselves against risk. So when you feel that feeling of like risk, and I feel it in my gut, like, oh, I'm scared, like a new opportunity. I'm about to invest in this property. I'm about to sign this new owner up. I'm scared. It comes from somewhere. But when I'm like, because I read that book, it kind of challenged me to kind of say, okay, I know that I'm naturally going to be afraid. So because I know that, let me just like challenge that in me and try to work against it and try to, okay, Shannon, I'm afraid. And that's predictable. That those me being irrational and wanting to be risk adverse is very predictable. And so how do I
Mm.
work against that? And so there's all these different examples in the book. It's just a game changer in my mindset. And it helped me kind of think through things where I know I'm going to self-sabotage. And how do you know the mind is going to do this to you? You know you're going to procrastinate. You're going to all these things. So how do you fight against it? And knowing yourself, I think, is one of the best things you could do as a leader. And knowing what things that you're good at, knowing the things that your pitfalls. And people are like, "Oh, you're such a risk taker." I'm like, "I'm not a risk. I don't think I'm a risk taker. I don't know. I maybe I am a little bit more of a risk taker, but like I think through it a little bit more." But that book was amazing. Sorry, I'm rambling, but that book was amazing.
That's amazing. No, thanks for sharing that. And Shannon, I could keep you here for another 2 hours. No joke. This has been super exciting, and I love the energy. I love the mindset. I love the story. The grit. Super nice. It's been a privilege to have you on. So thank you so much. Where can people connect? Where can people learn more about Elevate Vacation Rentals?
Yeah, I'm not as much on social media, but you can find me on LinkedIn, Shannon St.Val on LinkedIn. And then our website is www.ep-mg.com. And you can contact us there or direct message me via LinkedIn. So, yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Shannon, for taking the time.